I don't know about you, but like, on my graphics cards and so on, I've gone with, ASUS. Some people call it ASUS. I always call it ASUS. I've gone with my ASUS graphics cards since, I think my first video card that was worth mentioning, right, was a GeForce 2 Titanium back in like 2002, 2001, 2002. When I was playing Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, Counter-Strike, the first Counter-Strike. And I had an ASUS graphics card, and I just always gone with them. They're just better quality, and I don't know, just a good brand. Not having to do like all the customizable stuff, like, switching over from an aluminum heatsink to copper. Just always seems to be that brand that was just a little bit better than some of the others. To each his own, right? All right, let's get back into this. One thing that stood out the most was its list of major partners. Some are already recognizable, like JASMY partner, Press VAIO. Shout out to GF Burke, who doesn't like me to mention anything about VAIO because he's going to say, what are you going to do, Max? Showcase a 1990s laptop from VAIO? I get where you're coming from. It says most people will also recognize ASUS. Yes, we just said it. Toshiba as well. We understand Toshiba has key partnerships with BaaS. BaaS is heavily partnered, obviously, with JASMY. Even some of the same, people, Kunitake Ando, Kazumasa Sato, right? But to keep this thread to just an overview, we'll touch on just a couple, and I'll hit the back button here in a bit. But it says, for instance, let me just jump back into this. Oh, here it is. Jesse of KIR Finance, shout out to him. He gave us a shout out on his recorded video. That was really cool. It stands for Keeping It Real Finance, right? Last year, Jesse found that the parent company of VAIO, since its 2014 buyout from Sony, listen to this, guys, is Japan Industrial Partners. JIP is also in the process of buying out Toshiba Group, right? Worth pointing out. Now, on top of this, how about some of this recent AMAs? Brian points out, we know from Hara, this recent AMA hosted by Tycho Tweets, who is tracking the intersection of art, crypto, and data ownership, mentioned that JASMY was in talks with ASUS. Wow. So we talk about the Internet of Things. You know how bullish that sounds? You know how key that is? I mean, it's like some projects will talk about, like, we're in a key partnership with Funetiki. Who the heck is Funetiki? I never heard of Funetiki. Oh, okay. They're the subsidiary of Zhaojing 2. I never heard of Zhaojing 2. Have you? No. But I definitely have heard of ASUS because I'm a gamer, right? And most gamers have heard about ASUS. I mean, if a gamer has been around for even just, 2 years or more when it comes to building a custom-built PC, especially if they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to get a RTX, 4080, right? ASUS, RTX 4080. Okay, that's a very expensive video card. There's other ones, I get it. But then more than likely you heard of ASUS, okay? And even if you're not a gamer, I think some people heard of ASUS. And, like it mentions, I mean, he said that they're also working with Microsoft and Intel. I mean, these are all really, really big names. But even not mentioning Microsoft and Intel, right, who are the bigger players, ASUS, that's a very, very impressive. Now, IP3 may be the connection to all of that. Again, it's just like, it's more than just rubbing elbows. Just, hey, let's get partnered with this company who has connections to this other company. We don't have to be direct partners of, some of these other guys that are tied into it. But, It all makes sense. All right. There's more. We're always talking about JASMY with the smart cities, society 5.0. All these things are worth pulling out, right? Absolutely. So let's look back to IP3 technology. They are working on a few things in China that could be very relevant to JASMY. They sell a lot of hardware, but their two solutions were very interesting. And I want to state this, right? So I know this is a JASMY segment, okay? I put out a Stellar XLM video about the whole thing of, Elon Musk and Starlink and Jed McCaleb and Vast. This guy posted, until I hear it out of Elon Musk's mouth, I don't believe it. Okay, well, I hope this guy has, for instance, what? That he already has his bags packed on XLM. But let's say he's the type of guy who doesn't have his bags packed. And he's like, I'm never going to get into Stellar until I hear from Elon Musk's mouth. Let me tell you something. If that is the people's belief when it comes to acquiring digital assets such as Stellar, or for instance, such as JASMY, with some of these, to have things confirmed, you are going about crypto the absolute wrong way. You do not want to accumulate these digital assets, right, at these prices, or I should say at future prices like that after things have been confirmed. So that poor guy is going to literally wait for Stellar to be, worth over $1 or more, or $5 and so on. Oh, now I'm going to get into Stellar when you had the opportunity at 10 cents. Or how about this, JASMY? I'm going to get this JASMY. Now it's like, 50 cents or something like that, when you could have got it for pennies on the dollar, like what it is right now. That's just absolutely ridiculous. That's how people get not only wrecked, but you don't understand the whole thing of the concept, of the accumulation phase. That's just ridiculous. So yeah, they sell a lot of hardware, but their two solutions were very interesting. Let's blow this up for a second. 5G products, mini PCs, Internet of Things, like it shows right here. 5G smart park. What is that, right? It says the R&D personnel fully draws on the operating experience of domestic advanced parks. We talk about Society 5.0, especially when it comes to JASMY, Japan, and so on. Introduction to the smart city plan. Understand that, like, all these companies that we're talking about, right? Whether it's Microsoft, Intel, I guess ASUS, Toshiba, many other ones and so on. Even Google, I guess you could say. They're all part of this mix of these concepts. Maybe we never see these concepts of smart cities in the United States, and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Some people feel as though, like, I don't want that over here. I get that. But just because we don't agree about it over here in the United States doesn't mean that there aren't cultures in the world where they are literally actively working to accomplish some of these things. Okay. And that has value. It has a tremendous amount of value because these Internet of Things are part of the mix. It states that 5G smart park life solutions, this has IoT technology as the core components of the solution. Now, I was born and raised in Southeast Portland, Oregon. I lived directly across from a park. It was called Mount Scott Park. I have fond memories of the park. We lived on the corner lot, of the 74th Avenue, and we used to always shoot off our fireworks and go way out into the field, into the park. Some of you guys maybe heard of the concept of like a block party and stuff like that. I'm telling you that I'll never like trade those memories. Those are precious times in my book with friends, family, and so on, that a lot of them are not even here anymore. And it was such a wonderful time. But like, when I think about, like, back then, a park, well, what about, like, where we're at now? A modern type of park, a smart park? What is that? So, I'm not going to jump into the IP3-tech because I think we tried to go there earlier, then, some problems with the interpretation. But here's a little bit of those highlights for you guys if you hold JASMY and you're like, this is a segment that I appreciate. Here it basically is. And then, of course, these are screenshots taken from the actual IP3 site. But Yingzhong Technology 5G Smart Park Life Solution. Here's the background of the project. The R&D personnel fully drew on the operating experience of domestic advanced parks, fully considering the service carriers of the park and the user portraits of enterprises and personnel at the same time, make a panoramic 5G digital. Again, it's kind of messed up with the translation, but combining the enterprises solution and future development of the park. Here's a little bit more about this. This is application fields, smart security, smart fire protection. I mean, everything as far as like compliance, right? Parking, lighting, you name it, right? All this stuff being applied to it, mobile payment based business services. And think about that for a moment, right? There's going to be, of course, the chosen ones for the payment rails. I mean, if Ripple is showing up to IVS Crypto 2023 as a diamond sponsor, you better believe that they see the future vision for smart cities. We get that. We're not saying that JASMY is going to be used as a form of payment, but what we are going to say is that JASMY is going to be used for what, guys? For its main utility layer, and that is for personal data lockers. People want their data protected. And of course, with them having Hyperledger Fabric and so on, we understand that every major project that is tied into data consistently is using Hyperledger Fabric. How do we know that? Perfect example is what you see, for instance, with Casper. All right, going more into this. What are some of the advantages of this? Well, there's tons of advantages of it and so on, right? But like it says, big screen technology of visualized data for real-time status and big data, making it an indispensable business tool for park management decision makers to manage and operate the park. Here's an idea of the reach, right, of where the signals go out and so on. It's kind of hard to see it on this visual. So if anything, I'm going to copy this and blow it up a little bit bigger for you guys. So let's take you to this tab instead. And on this particular tab, I'm going to come out of the screen for a second. So here we go. I'm going to take off this banner real quick so it's easier to see. A couple of them. All right, so let's draw some emphasis to this. Smart park, okay? So the things are kind of hard to see here, and that's why I, decided to blow it up more. Basically speaking, it's not so much about the smart parking. I mean, some people like that. I mean, let's face it, we can have a lot more efficient parking. I mean, nobody likes to go to a big event and drive around over and over and make circles, if you will, trying to find a parking spot, right? Hence why a lot of us do use, for instance, our phones to try to have an app that will literally tell us hey, you know what? There's an open parking space and such and such parking garage. I don't know if you guys ever done that. I'm telling you flat out, if you haven't done that yet, it's worth it. Okay. But what about having something which always consistently does something like that? That's big, right? Smart elevators, right? I don't know how that's going to work, just being honest. Video surveillance. This is, of course, where a lot of Americans, they don't like this, right? I don't like being monitored by this surveillance. But you got to keep in mind, different culture, different area, they have accepted this, right? There's value with this. A smart street light. How's that going to work? I mean, is it kind of similar to, a guy who just randomly drives by your neighborhood and then automatically, you have the brightest freaking light in all of, where I live, Phoenix, Arizona, and just blaring into my room, somebody, flashing the high beams because this guy feels insecure. I'm gonna have this super high beam light blaring into Max's bedroom to keep him up all day night long, for he can't sleep because I am the type of guy who I don't want to own any type of weapon anyway. I just want to have a bright light. Thank you so much, right? Yeah. All right. Then on top of that, look at some of this other stuff: border protection, energy management. I mean, we could go on and on. Equipment maintenance, public information release. What's that all about? Public broadcasting, real-time positioning, central monitoring system, a smart home, an eye. I don't even know what the heck that is. Smart access control and building intercom. Again, things that contribute not only to a smart city, but a smart park. Let's jump back to what we have here on this this outline real quick. So there's a little bit more, obviously. And let me jump back to this. Brian also talks about the smart city solution. He says communication tech, sensing tech, big data, like some of the stuff we talked about, right? Compared to a traditional smart city plan. If some people are asking, what is a traditional smart city plan? Are you kidding me? Look everywhere, right? That's right in front of you. This also uses current grid infrastructure and replaces old tech with smart tech. How so? Let's blow that up. The project background and construction goals, it says the deficiencies of traditional streetlights in terms of energy consumption, safety, functions, and management can be all based on smart streetlights. Various communication methods, rich sensing devices, and mature big data technologies can reduce energy consumption. Now, how about this? I'm from the old school, right? Like I was part of that generation where we went out and we played out in the street. Okay. We rode bicycles and stuff like not like I hate to say it, like this generation, you hardly see any kids outside. I have one neighbor who has his kids, they ride bikes and so on. I want to go up to that guy and literally congratulate him and say, hey, you know what? That's awesome. You're encouraging your kids to play outside. I mean, I wouldn't recommend playing outside right now. In Phoenix, it's 111 degrees, but you get my point. But they're always around the year playing outside and, taking in some of the old school life, if you will, right? So my thing is this, right? And I'm sure a lot of old school people are here too. And that is basically, what did our parents tell us? Like, what did your mom tell you back in the day when it came to street lights? All right, you see that street light? Okay, if that street light comes, if the city turns that thing on, that means you get your butt home. Right, that was a classic thing, right? We didn't need to have a freaking watch or any of that. I mean, I had a watch anyway. I'd always just like having a watch. But yeah, that comes on, street light. That means take your butt home immediately. Like, pedal home. If you're not that far away, walk home, whatever the case. Just get home, okay? But how about a street light that makes it a little bit more smarter tech, right? So 90% operation and maintenance cost reduction. At the end of the day, if we're talking about being more energy efficient, burning less carbon, this is all part of this equation. Basic functions, remotely control the lighting and dimming of lamps. So maybe it's not that it turns off, it just doesn't need to waste as much energy. You know what I mean? Maybe as it sees on the sensors that something is approaching, then it brightens up. I mean, again, things that make sense. I don't need to get into all this. Here's a little idea of how some of these things look. The PC workstation, central control center. I don't need to really blow up all this stuff. You kind of have an idea. But it's a breakdown completely of how all this works. Like this one, the Internet of Things gateway. Again, you could take more of your deep dive into this. I'm going to jump down to this part. And Brian talks about this. He says, while he's still skeptical that the CCP will adopt data democracy, right? Let's face it. Smart cities elsewhere will need to incorporate tech like JASMY's in order to comply with GDPR and APPI data privacy laws. Now, on I think it was my second to last deep dive. Actually, it was the last one. So let me think about that. I don't know. It was either the last one or the second to last one. I did address APPI. And if you're wondering what APPI basically is like here in the United States, we have HIPAA laws. APPI is the way you should look at that for Japan. Basically, it's the same thing for the most part, but the Japanese version of it. Basically, the medical industry, what can they do with your data? Who could view the forms, so on and so forth. So, for instance, there's a scenario that says, let's look at, Pegatron. And just do it for a brief moment. I mean, again, this is kind of a deep dive, but hear me out on some of this stuff. It says, once again, it is easy to see that all the tech around Pegatron, who's obviously tied into ASUS, could easily incorporate JASMY. Again, you got to keep in mind the personal data, these PDLs, just like every other IP3 tech partner, but there are two other things or interesting things about them. And let's pull up some of this stuff. They have major shareholders worth pointing out. And how about this? Some of you guys are you're not just invested into crypto, you are invested into stocks. What is one of the best performing stocks out there, right? This is not financial advice. I'm not into it. I wish I was early. It's NVIDIA. Okay. So we understand that, we should pay attention to all this stuff. So look at some of the major shareholders. There's ASUS Tech Inc., total shares owned. Look at the percentage of ownership. Morgan Stanley's on this list, but I mean, ASUS ranks higher than most of these other guys. When you get more into this, it talks about some of the management team and so on. I'm going to jump to this next part, and that is wearable technology. All right, look at this. Wearable devices emphasize fashionable, compact, and they often feature user-friendly, intuitive user interface. We talk about GPS tracking systems. Again, all this stuff in a smart city or smart park is going to make sense. IoT products, having it to be like low power consumption. Again, the example about that light doesn't need to be fully on, blazing 24/7. As I get more and more into this, I like this part from Boy Dog 7, where he talks about some of the recent news that Pegatron partnered with TWS to enable 5G private cloud enterprise service. To quote him, TWS provides blockchain as a service. And then remember I was talking about Hyperledger Fabric? Well, like it says, you guessed it, Hyperledger Fabric. How so? Well, they have a press release in regards to all this. So why pay attention to this? Well, it gets into some of the more nitty-gritty details. And with some of these nitty-gritty details, you do see this. Let's blow this up. Hopefully you guys see this. Let me double check the other page. Yeah, you guys see this. So please smash that like. So April 25th, 2023. Were you aware that Taiwan Web Service partnered with Pegatron, again, that ASUS connection, to enable a 5G private cloud enterprise service? It goes on to mention that this, was a collaboration between Taiwan Web Services, which is TWS, and Pegatron to introduce 5G O-RAN open architecture solutions to TWS 5G AI-ready mobile edge cloud. My God, remember we talking about JASMY with edge computing? How many times did we mention that? Did we forget about that? This is important to pay attention to. And it basically mentions that platform AI HPC public cloud service, the key focus in targeted global 5G cloud vertical market will be smart manufacturing, smart cities, smart healthcare. Think about that for a second. Smart transportation, culture, innovation, education, and entertainment. Everything that contributes to what? Society 5.0. A lot of people feel as though there is not Society 5.0 yet. Right, there isn't. They're just for the same reason why there isn't full Web 3. If anything, I would call it Society 4.5 at this point. In regards to Pegatron, Open Architecture Solutions supports O-RAN, E2 Open Interface, and 3GPP standard interfaces for O-RAN compliant cloud deployments in the TW5 5G AI-ready mobile edge cloud platform. And it provides high availability, high scalability. Everybody's talking about can you scale? Well, high scalability, there you go, and high performance 5G network coverage for the complete 5G private cloud service. The end-to-end 5G cloud solution will bring customers a whole new 5G cloud premium service experience. Why so? Well, at the end of the day, you have to have something that's going to be fast and efficient. If we're talking about scalability, like I've always said, I have to have the same user experience as you and everybody else. What's the point of having a smart park or a smart city and so on contributing to Society 5.0 if you're going to get throttled or, everybody's not going to have the same user experience? That would defeat the whole purpose of things, right? You have to have the, these services working going 1,000 miles an hour, working at light speed, I should say, not even 1,000 miles an hour. This quote's pretty good, and then I won't read the rest of this. This is good stuff. The 5G AI-ready platform offers a variety of vertical integration services and workloads that not only lower the barriers to enable cross-domain technology for enterprises, but also reduce the system integration and implementation time and cost, helping enterprises to have, listen to this, one-stop digital transformation and boost enterprise innovation with subscription-based cloud services, said Peter Wu, CEO of ASUS Cloud and TWS. Let's talk about that for just a brief moment. Subscription-based cloud services. I mean, we know, for instance, shout out to Tim Shea, a subscription-based cloud service is what makes Flux stand out. Okay. And, it's 90% cheaper than using Amazon Web Services for, Amazon Cloud Web Services, I should say. About 90% difference compared also to Google Cloud Services and so on. But my thing is this, when we talk about JASMY and getting that option to monetize that data and tie it into some of these subscription-based services, you can have an idea of how this will all be tied in together. Now, I'm going to jump back to a little bit more about this, and let me just share this tab instead. This right here, okay, and that's a little bit more about Taiwan Web Services, BaaS, which is called Blockchain as a Service Platform. Now, you may be thinking, like, how is this all tied into JASMY? You better believe that if JASMY is partnered up, like, for instance, with ASUS, and ASUS has tied, heavy ties to Microsoft and like Intel and some of these other things, all of it coming together as a collaboration, if you will, to get the job done of what? Smart parks, smart cities, and so on. I love using this as an example, this analogy, to give you guys a broader idea of why this matters. And basically speaking, is like, again, how we look at a major motion picture. A movie is not made by one person, right? An actor doesn't make a movie. I mean, you might see famous actors that later become producers or directors and so on, right? Shout out to like Michael Douglas. He was a famous TV actor on a TV show I absolutely loved, which was called The Streets of San Francisco, featuring Carl Malden, R.I.P. Carl Malden. And then after like the 5th season, or right when the 5th season was going to start, he decides to branch out into like, a Hollywood movie. And then hence why he was an executive producer of what? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And that basically did what? Won Best Picture. My point being is, he's just one guy. All right. Motion pictures are more than just one guy for the most part, unless it's like a very low budget film. And even those still have a handful of people. But my point is, just like a motion picture, you got to look at this whole thing of the smart cities, smart parks, and so on. All these key partnerships, all these key players, whether it's TWS, Taiwan Web Service, whether it's ASUS, whether it's Google, Microsoft, some of these other guys mentioned, Toshiba. Okay. But this one, blockchain as a service, look what's mentioned here. TWCC BaaS platform, as in blockchain as a service, provides Hyperledger Fabric and Hyperledger BSU architectures. Who uses Hyperledger Fabric? JASMY. And it says, for instance, an easy-to-use, secure, reliable, and stable environment to help the landing of blockchain applications. Based on the features provided by TWCC, blockchain as a service application developers can complete the basic tenant management, contract invocation, result query, and even listening to build an enterprise class blockchain network in a time-saving and low-cost manner. You don't think that's big for JASMY, who wants to keep everything at low cost? If they're talking about contributing to the Society 5.0, Society 5.0 is all about making things more faster, efficient, and low cost. All right. I don't know if I've mentioned this next one. Yeah, a little bit of VAIO. I mean, that's good stuff, but we already know about some of this stuff. I will mention this in closing on this segment because I know it's quite the deep dive. This one, Janus BIOS Shield. Secure PC is different than JASMY. Sometimes we got to mention some of like the potential competition, right? And does not use blockchain. So in reality, it's like some people point out, is there some real competition for JASMY? Well, yeah. But is it on blockchain? The answer is no. Okay. But it was very interesting connection. Not quite sure if they are still operating. One of the things that became their solution, but they, of course, were also using, and look at this, guys. You go with a model that works, right? They're also using VAIO as well as ASUS models. And there's more to it here. You're welcome to nerd out. There's some of the specs. This, of course, is Janus Secure PC Desktop. It doesn't, it's not a secure blockchain PC. All right. There's what it looks like. Again, I'm not gonna get into all this. You can nerd it out in your own time. A little bit of VAIO. There you go. Right. Thought I'd give it an honorable mention. Then now in closing, like I says, there is way too much to post in this thread, and I already mentioned way too much, right? But I do like sharing you guys this information from an educational standpoint because it's definitely worth paying attention to. If you don't like hearing about Society 5.0, then you should be into JASMY anyway, unless you're the type of guy who just apes into stuff. We can agree to disagree on that. Don't mean no offense. So there is way too much to post in the thread. He just wanted to give us a snapshot in regards to IP3 tech. I'm telling you flat out, you're going to see more about IP3. In his opinion, this is good company for JASMY. I agree in regards to its Asian expansion, not its U.S. expansion, because you understand that's not going to really make sense over here in the United States. Again, different cultures. He looks forward to seeing how JASMY will play a role in this tech web. I do as well, but you kind of see it all kind of coming together.